All right, now pleased to be joined by Mississippi State head coach Ben Howland. And Ben, listen, a lot of optimism. Year 7 in Starkville, which to me sounds crazy. 7 years you've been there.
Yeah, it really is. It goes by so fast, and I've really enjoyed my time here at Mississippi State. We've had a lot of fun and coached some really good kids, and I'm excited about this team as we go into the year. We were very fortunate to have a really good transfer portal recruiting year. And it's something I'm actually, I hate this new rule. I hate it for basketball. I don't like it at all, but it is what it is. So you have to work within the confines of, the changing landscape. And we were very fortunate. One of the things we were fortunate about is the fact that the kids we brought in, we had recruited and had really close relationships the first time they went through. So that's what really is different than probably which will be down the road as this thing continues to evolve, this new transfer portal that's going to really change the landscape of college athletics and especially college basketball.
Yeah, I would agree. And listen, I mean, you can reload so quickly, but you also, again, no matter how well you recruit your current kids, they're going to leave some of them. I mean, you come to the realization that it doesn't matter even what type of relationship you have sometimes with some kids. Bottom line is that some are going to leave because they want more minutes. Maybe some will go down a level. They weren't quite good enough. Whatever it is, the turnover in college basketball is it's already insane this year.
Yeah, it is. And I hate it because one of the things it does is not teaching, to stick with things, to fight through adversity, to improve and get better. It used to be you could recruit a kid and, hey, by the time he's, a junior and a senior, he's really going to be a good player, having been in your program for a couple of years. And, they continue to get better throughout their career. And that's the whole key for any player is continued improvement. But now you have kids, are entering college and they expect to be done in 1 or 2 years. And, you have to be incredibly blessed, incredibly gifted to be that player that's a one and done or two and done, or even an NBA player, period. And everybody is chasing that dream to the point where I think a lot of mistakes are made. And, it's a tough, landscape right now. And I feel bad for a lot of kids that end up going, you're going to see kids, Jeff, they're going to go to 4 different schools in 5 years.
It's ridiculous.
So you never develop any relationships long-term with any of the normal students, with anybody.
Yep.
And I think you really miss out on, it used to be that, education was such a primary function to all this and should be still. And in many cases it is, but it's losing this luster there because it's all about being a pro. And I understand every kid, myself, grew up wanting to be a pro. Of course you want to be a pro. I mean, that's the goal of every kid as we dream and, we work hard growing up and it's just tough. It's a tough scenario. And, but again, it is what it is. And we have to deal with it as coaches.
All right, so let's get to this team a little bit. And the great news is you bring back 2 of your top 3 players, right? I mean, Iverson, a guy who could score at a high level, Tolu, who had a great year last year in terms of his production. And you add, listen, if I'm ranking the coaches who did the best, the portaling, that's what I call it when you go portaling now, I think you got to be top 5. And as you said, the difference with you and a lot of other coaches that brought in 3-4 guys, impact guys, you kind of finished second with a lot of these guys. For better or worse, you know them now. So now you have them. So go through kind of right now the strengths of this team, which I think, honestly, I think your team is put together very well. I don't think you have a lot of glaring weaknesses on this team.
Well, I'll tell you, we're right now, our biggest problem is just the health of our team. We had Rocco Watts come in this summer and had to have surgery right away upon his arrival on a hip labrum, where he tore the labrum in his hip probably sometime during his sophomore year. Didn't know how bad it was, just played through it, but it just got worse, during the off season, needed to have surgery. And, so he'll be back. He's making a good recovery. It'll be 14 weeks tomorrow post-surgery. We expect him back after the first couple of games, hopefully. And, he's out shooting now. He can jump on a little bit. He's running on the Ultra G, which is a type of machine treadmill that allows you to run at less than your full body weight. So he's running at like 70% of his body weight. Really doing a good job of recovering with our trainer and doing all the stuff he needs to do in rehab. And then Tolu Smith, another key guy that you mentioned, is one of our top players, led the league in rebounding as a sophomore, had an incredible summer, just really worked his tail off to improve between the end of last year going in this year, and then sustained a fracture that has him out for about almost 3 months, just to be safe. And this is the type of injury where you could rush him back a little earlier, but in both cases, we're going to be incredibly conservative, incredibly safe to make sure that when they do come back, that number one, they're truly ready so they can not only come back, but then stay healthy for the rest of their year and the rest of their careers. And that's really important. So it may cost us a little bit here early in the season, but long-term, both for our team and obviously, most importantly for them, I think it's the right way to handle it. So we're going to be very, very conservative with both Tolu's injury and Rockets.
Well, the good thing then is, I mean, again, you got a tough non-conference, and you don't want to miss on opportunities in the non-conference, but your league is going to be so strong that you'll have plenty of opportunities within your league when you're 100%, hopefully.
Yeah, you're just fighting an uphill battle when you lose some early non-conference games. And, the committee, I'm sure, takes things into account when you have injuries, which would be the way they should look at it. It's like they do at the end of the year. When you have injuries late in the year, they take that into account and they change your seating accordingly. That being said, we're very excited to have Garrison Brooks in the program. Garrison was an outstanding player for 4 years at the University of North Carolina, including being an all ACC performer his junior year. But he brings not only a great player, but great leadership. He's just a quality young man. He was their team captain his junior and senior year. Did a great job for Coach Williams during his career there. And we're just excited to have him here for his 1 year, basically his COVID year, to come play. And the one thing I love about him is he really stretches the floor for us as a power forward. The way he's shooting the basketball from three is so exciting.
Really?
He didn't do that a lot in his college career, but you'll see him doing a lot more here at Mississippi State. And you watch him, like the other day, I watched him make 45 out of 53 pointers from 7 different spots on the floor. So when you shoot 90% with no one guarding you, that's really good. That's NBA good.
Yes, it is. In
that range. And he's going to have a really good year. And it's just been a great influence and stabilizer for our younger players. And just, a wonderful young man. Then we also had DJ Jeffries, who we finished second on to Memphis in the original recruiting process. Had 2 very good years for Penny up in Memphis, and elected to transfer. And needless to say, we were really excited to get him because we knew him really well. I probably recruited him harder than any kid I recruited since I've been here, going into my 7th year. Being an Olive Branch, Mississippi kid, started recruiting him when I first arrived, going into his sophomore year in high school. He played great against us in the NIT championship, where Memphis State beat us in the finals of the NIT down in Texas this past March. Was really impressive. So we're really excited to have him. He brings, a great skill package, the ability to pass, very good defensively. He's long, he's active. And I think he's just going to keep getting better and growing as a player. Then we mentioned Rocket Watts a little bit. Rocket left Michigan State, and we had recruited him out of high school because one of my assistants, Ernie Ziegler's from Michigan. And so we recruited him hard and tried. He stayed at home and went to Michigan State, but when he became available, we tried very hard to get involved, and we're lucky enough to do so. He brings us a real good player because he knows how to defend. He's played in a very good program under Tom Izzo, where he's been really coached and coached hard for 2 years. He has some toughness to him. I think he's going to really add a lot for us, and is very, very good, like I said, at the defensive end, which is critical. And then
for you it is, Ben. We know that.
Yeah, for everybody.
Yes.
Everybody who wins, look at Baylor. Why was Baylor the national championship team more than any other reason? They were great defensively.
Sure were.
And then the last transfer was Shaquille Moore from North Carolina State. Very good shooter since he's arrived here. I mean, we've really worked hard with him. Really excited about him. Excellent athlete, very bouncy kid. I think he really is going to play an important role for us this year. Love him as a young man. Good motor, plays extremely hard. So those 4 transfers give you immediate experience, gives us guys that come from all, in this case, high major programs.
Yeah.
And I think they're really going to add a lot and really afford us, a lot of optimism going into this season.
What do you envision from the point guard spot? Like, it's funny because Izzo played Rocket last year. He needed a point guard, so he kind of put him back and forth. And Rocket's more of a 2. We know that. He's more of a scorer. I think Shaquille was maybe your most underrated pickup. Like, everybody knows about those other guys. They were more highly recruited. Garrison was obviously a guy who played at Carolina and was so good his junior year. I think Shaquille, his upside and what you need might be, again, as important as any of those 4.
I don't disagree with you. And I really like Shaquille a lot. And, he's getting better and better. He arrived in June, so we had him for the 4 hours a week for 8 weeks, plus the lifting and conditioning and getting with our guys and working in the gym and getting up lots of shots, really trying to do a few things to make a shot even better. He's shooting great from 3 right now. I mean, just phenomenal. We're on a regular basis, not being guarded in 7-spot shooting that we do. He's making 80% plus every time. So I'm really excited about him. And, he's got a strong body. He's 188, 190 pounds at 6 feet tall, explosive, 43-inch vertical. But our point guard will be shared between him and Iverson. Iverson, I think, is one of the biggest improvements he's made between the end of last season to now. Is just becoming a better decision maker, creating for others. Yeah. And so I really think that, and I love playing 2 point guards together. I played Brandon Knight and Carl Krause together at Pitt. Farmar and Collison and Westbrook, Collison and Drew Holiday. I mean, I've had numerous, different groupings.
Your best teams, Ben.
Just name my best teams, correct. And that's what, you're looking at in the NBA. Everybody's a point guard. Everybody's got to be able to handle it, pass it, bounce it, create, and shoot it. And that's what everybody's looking for at the highest levels of basketball.
What is your biggest concern with this team other than health? Let's say Rocket and Tolu get healthy, after the first few games, they're up to speed halfway through non-conference play, and in league play, you're good to go. What's your biggest concern with this group?
You said nail right on the head, just health. If we are healthy, if we get back to where we're at full strength, the way we expected to be going into this, and get those guys playing the month of December together, where we can really, build ourselves against a very tough non-conference schedule. I think we'll have a good showing in our conference. And as you mentioned, Jeff, our conference is so good,
loaded,
so competitive, so many good teams, great coaches, great players. It's just a monster. And I think the thing that's exciting for me in my 7th year now in the SEC here at Mississippi State. That's being recognized nationally now. I mean, when you look at the coaching in this conference and the coaches, I think we have 6 guys that have been to a Final Four, maybe more. I'd have to count, but it's incredible when you look at the resumes of some of the coaches throughout our conference and how well coached it is. And then, the quality, you look at the last 3 drafts in the NBA and you look at the SEC. If you look at the last 3 years, our league has done the best collectively over that, last 3 year span. I mean, recruiting has been phenomenal. So it's very, very competitive, really exciting to be part of. And we're really looking forward to the season.
Yeah, you've been a part of some good leagues, Big East in its kind of heyday, then in the Pac-12 when it was really good, and now you've seen the SEC. And I think it did kind of Mike Slive, the late Mike Slive, was a big part of it too, of scheduling and bringing in, getting ADs to hire guys like you and push and really push that it's not just a football league. So I do think it's gotten better. All right, before we let you go, give me maybe a newcomer or two. I don't know how these freshmen are going to make much of an impact, man. Maybe they will early.
The key guys are the guys that returned last year in terms of who are impactful. Number one, Derek Fountain came on strong for us at the end of the year, really played well the last half of the season, including the NIT run that we made. Cameron Matthews, same thing. Both those guys have had good jumps in terms of the offseason. Javian Davis, JD, we call him, had a great offseason this summer. He's down to 236 pounds. He's a kid that went to Alabama out of high school at upwards to 300 pounds entering college. He's 236 right now. You see it as explosiveness. You see how well he's jumping. He's incredibly committed. I expect a really solid campaign out of him. And then Anderson Garcia, who played sparingly for us last year, a young man from the Dominican Republic, who was really, just learning the game and also, learning the terminology. When you transfer over English to Spanish and you're trying to, get it in your head as a player, it's not always easy. He's made a big jump. So I think we have some pretty good depth, and I'm excited about that as well.
All right. Well, listen, we appreciate you taking a few, Ben. You sound excited. You got me excited about Mississippi State. Like I said, I don't know if anybody went portaling more successfully than Ben Howland this past offseason. And we just got to get these guys healthy, and hopefully I'll get down to Starkville at some point this year. But thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate having me on the show.
Before we move on, let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at BetRivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up for BetRivers yet, now is the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, it's more secure, and it's more reliable. Now that basketball season is tipping off, get in on the action at betrivers.com today, or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. You must be 21 years or older. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And while I got you here, let's talk about the Field of 68 Media Network, where college basketball matters most all year round. This is a digital media and podcast network that we've been building over the course of the last year. We have shows hosted by some of your favorite players covering the program that they love the most. AJ Guyton hosts the House of Hoosier. Eric Devendorf covers Syracuse on the Scorer's Table. Dan Dickow hosts the Gonzaga Bulldog broadcast. We have Florida's Patrick Young and Duke's Andre Dawkins and North Carolina's Shammond Williams and Michigan's Stu Douglas and Illinois' Deion Thomas. The list goes on and on and on. We have more than 30 shows right now. So hit the links below and check them all out. And while you're at it, make sure that you go check out the Field of 12 Media Network, your home for college football.
All right, that was Mississippi State head coach Ben Howland. And now for more on Mississippi State, we turn to a couple of guys who know the program, know the team about as well as anybody. And I say that with all due respect because they got a lot of new guys. So I don't think anybody knows them incredibly well with the freshmen, the transfers. But let's welcome in Paul Jones from 24/7, who does a tremendous job covering not only hoops, but football as well. And Neil Price, the voice of Mississippi State. Guys, I appreciate you taking a few. I know it's football season, but with the way the football team's looking, Paul, I think, they may be excited about hoops a little bit earlier than on schedule here.
Yeah, I could see that. And, it's still a long way to go in football season. But, like I mentioned before, I think the off season with basketball got excited transfers that the fact, they return a lot of the guys from last year with the exception of, Davon Smith transferred to Georgia Tech. DJ Stewart decided to go pro, which was kind of a surprise, but they filled in the void there with, the pickups of Rocket Watts and Shaquille Moore in the backcourt. Obviously, Garrison Brooks and DJ Jeffries, 2 more transfers that grabbed headlines. So I think there's a little bit more momentum, higher expectations entering this season than we've seen before in Howland's tenure here.
And I think there should be, Neil. I think there should be. I mean, again, you got 4 transfers. When you go through like winners and losers of the transfer portal, I would say Mississippi State's somewhere in the top 10, maybe even the top 5. I mean, again, as Paul said, Rocket Watts didn't have a great year at Michigan State last year, but super talented, highly touted. Garrison Brooks, a veteran who's done it at the highest level. I love Shaquille Moore. I think he's got a ton of potential and started to scratch the surface last year at NC State. And DJ Jeffries, who they know well, obviously being from around there. Those are 4 all-impact transfers. So you're going to be older. You're going to be talented. What do you think of this group coming in?
Well, there's potential, and I think that's about all you can say at this point in the year until they all get together and they play a little bit and you get to see how they're going to mesh with each other. I'm excited personally, just like these bugs are excited to be on the screen. I'm excited personally to see how that backcourt group comes together because I think that's the area that they really need the most help in when you look at, you got Iverson Molinar back. And losing Davon Smith, I thought was a big blow because I thought his ceiling was really, really high. So having 2 guys who have experience at, a high major level coming in, that certainly helps. Can they add something in perimeter shooting? I think that's something that's been missing. If they can do that, that obviously is good. And with Ben Howland, the premium is going to be on defense. So can you lock down? Can you really do a nice job? And that's important because DJ Stewart was a guy a year ago who guarded the opposing team's best offensive threat. So they've got to have somebody come in and do that. Garrison Brooks, I think his resume speaks for itself because he did it at North Carolina. ACC's been one of the premier leagues in the country forever. And then, with DJ Jeffries, I saw him up close, well, as up close as you could be doing a remote broadcast when they played against Memphis in the NIT championship. And what I like about him, not only is he local, but on the floor, here's a big guy that can handle it a little bit. And in today's game, I think that's very important. So, for Coach Howland to be viewed as an old school guy in a lot of ways, for him to embrace the transfer portal the way that he has this year, and by all accounts to have success doing it, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, you agree, Paul, in terms of the strengths and weaknesses of this team. Again, I mean, perimeter shooting is probably going to be the big question mark. But for Ben Howland, listen, it does come down usually to defense. Does he give these guys a little bit more freedom? Or is, can you not teach an old dog new tricks and Ben Howland's still going to be Ben Howland?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not getting it done on the defensive end, you're going to have a hard time finding minutes. I mean, we saw that last year. Man, the guy's name slips my mind. Kid from Louisiana.
Oh, Jalen Johnson. Yeah, the shooter. Yeah, transferred in.
Yeah, he could shoot it well, and he could shoot it probably one of the best shooters on the team, but he couldn't defend. So that cut his minutes. But, I thought you brought up a good point on Shaquille Moore because, like Neil said, we haven't seen him yet in practice, the full team. But from what I've heard from reports, Shaquille's really been doing well in practice. And I think he gets overshadowed by the other big name transfers that came in, and that's understandable. But I think a big difference in this year's team, I did get to watch the big men practice one time, and it was just the front court players. Garrison Brooks has really extended his range. And, if you remember last year, Mississippi State, and Howland even mentioned it a couple times during the year. They were caught with the offense where, yes, you had to have Tolu Smith and Abdul Adu on the court at the same time. Yeah. Abdul good defensively. Tolu was solid on the glass, good scorer, consistent guy. But you had to have both of them on the court, which kept them from spreading the floor. You had two bigs at one time. That clogged the offense a lot. It kept, Molinar and those guys from getting a lot of open looks. But Garrison is really extended, and I saw that in practice. We'll see how it goes during the season. But, Garrison looks pretty consistent from 17, 18, 19 feet. And he will shoot the threes at times this year. But having him on the court to be able to spread the floor and have Tolu at probably his more natural position at center, I think that's going to be the biggest thing for their offense this year.
Yeah, listen, and Rocket Watts was interesting last year because, again, he came in with all this hype to Michigan State, and Michigan State didn't really have a point guard. So Izzo didn't know what to do with him. He started him off the ball and attack, which is really what you need to do with Rocket Watts. And then almost by just forcing it, he put him at the point. And then I think Rocket was all screwed up mentally. He didn't know what to do. He was trying to be a point, which is something he's not. Then he tried to throw him back to the two at the end of the year. I think what you got to do is just let Rocket be Rocket. Let him go. Let him attack. And really kind of the three-prong, guard trio here. I think they're all electric, right? Molinar, Rocket, Shaquille. Like, they're going to be fun to watch in Starkville this year.
And that's so important to get in this class because he is a if you didn't bring Shaquille in, well, you got Iverson and Rocket where they're not really point guards. They'll play some at the point this year, and they'll get some minutes there. But with Shaquille, you can use him 25, 27 minutes at the point and let Iverson and Rocket play the two guard while filling in at the point when they have to. But that's why I really think Shaquille Moore, and it may come back to bite me this season, but I think he was a very critical pickup. Let's go back to before DJ Stewart go pro. Howland really training DJ to be the point guard for this year. And, DJ's more of a two guard, maybe even a wing. But this year now with Shaquille in, you've got a true point guard.
Yeah, I think Shaquille was as important. You're right. As probably any addition. Neil, this is a program that had a lot of success under, I call him Slick Rick Stansbury. Okay. A lot of success under Slick Rick. And then obviously he left. Scott Strickland hires Rick Ray to try to clean up the program a little bit, lend some stability to it. Didn't work out. But as I always say, I don't think he gave him enough time either. I think you got to give somebody 4 years. I'm not saying Rick Ray would have done any better in year 4, but I just think he was brought in to clean up a little bit of a mess at that point. And he did that. At least he did that part of it. Then you hire Ben Howland. And what has it been like there in the Ben Howland era, which now enters year 7? How do we assess it right now and where Ben Howland is with this program?
Well, I think you summed it up pretty well. I mean, he got here when Rick Ray was trying to clean up a mess. I mean, and that predates my tenure here, but in talking to people who've been around the program a long time, that's a pretty good word to describe what it was. So in some ways, Coach Ray had cleaned out all of the bad, but there wasn't a whole lot of good, if that makes sense, in terms of talent and guys who really belonged at this level. That's how I understand it. So what Coach Howland was charged with doing was going out and finding guys who could come in and get this program back to where it could be competitive. I think mission accomplished with regard to that. Now the challenge is, can you find a way to be a team that's consistently in the NCAA picture? Can you find a way to get there more than once every 3 years? And, I think he's encouraged by what he's got because, Coach Howland, in my mind, has been a guy who always plays things a little bit close to the vest. When he's confident, it tends to be a quiet confidence. And he comes out in a press conference back in late spring, early summer, and says, we are going to be good. Buy your tickets now. If he makes a statement like that, I believe that's a sign that he feels really good about what he's got. And, that excites me, too, as a guy who's going to get to follow him around all year because I want to see them get back to the NCAA tournament. I want to see them get back to where they were, not only with Coach Stansbury, but what Richard Williams was doing before him. And if you want to go way, way back for those of a certain age, we can go back to what Babe McCarthy was doing, with Bailey Howell and all those guys back in the late 50s and early 60s. It'd be great if we could just get back to a point where this is a team that people think you're going to have to deal with in the SEC, and they've got the potential to be that this year in a loaded SEC,
Loaded. I mean, you called it. I mean, it has gotten better and better over the last few years, but Kentucky's not going to be what they were last year. Alabama is really good again. Arkansas is really good. Auburn's going to be completely different than they were a year ago. Tennessee's good again.
Yeah.
Right? Barnes has still got a ton of talent down there in Knoxville. You're right. I mean, you look at this team, and I say to myself, they could be really good, and yet really good may mean 6th in the SEC. That's
it's possible.
The scary part.
Yeah, I mean, and that's great for the conference because, listen, I love football. I grew up in the South. I get it. But I love basketball, and I love SEC basketball. And I can remember when it was a 2 or 3 horse race for a long, long time. Was it going to be Kentucky, Arkansas, or Florida? That was kind of the question you ask, And now to know that on any given night, you've got teams that can come in and knock off anybody, I think that's great for the league. And, Mississippi State staff has done a great job of going out and getting players to where now they're one of those teams that whether you're playing them on your floor or whether you're having to come to Starkville, it's not a pleasant experience a lot of times to have to go up against Coach Howland's defense. It's just not.
So, Paul, what do we Iverson Molinar, obviously he's electric. He can really score the basketball, averaged almost 17 a game last year. What does he do this year? What are realistic kind of expectations with all this talent coming in? Does he have to take a step back and understand, hey, you know what? I may not put up the numbers I did last year, or certainly they may not go up, but it's going to be for the betterment of the team because ultimately we're going to have guys that can score the ball all over the court.
I think I got a hint of that from talking to Iverson. I talked to Iverson a couple of days ago. I think it was well documented last offseason. He went to California to work with his uncle about his shooting. That was his big thing. It was clear that his shot improved last year. I think may not be exactly right, but 47% from 3. I mean, probably didn't talk about it enough, but this is a guy that went from 5.2 points a game to 16.8 points a game. That doesn't just happen overnight. But talking to Iverson recently, he said he worked on all aspects of the game, but the main thing he kept mentioning was creating for others and finding others and creating open shots for his teammates. So based off of that, it kind of sounded to me like he's doing what you were talking about doing. That's going to be the key factor for this team because, the ironic thing is all of these players, despite being transfers, they're familiar with Ben Howland and his staff. They're familiar with other players. They finished in the top 3 for Shaquille Moore when he was recruited in high school. And for all the rest of the guys, Rocket Watts, DJ Garrison, of course, Garrison signed with Mississippi State originally, but they were the runner-up for all of those kids. And I think that's a key factor. DJ played AAU ball with Cam Matthews and Derek Fountain. So these guys are intertwined in a way, and they know each other. They know each other's strengths. Can the ego stay out of it?
Right.
That's a factor because, you've got Iverson, Tolu, Garrison, DJ, possibly Shaquille or Rocket, even maybe Derek Fountain that are capable of averaging double digits on this team. And I think you could have 4 or 5 guys average double digits on this team. But, back to your point, I think Iverson's focus is on that team and making sure the guys around him are better to where he doesn't have to be the guy. Because let's face it, last year that was the situation. If Iverson and DJ were off, Mississippi State was not winning the game. It didn't matter if Derek Fountain threw in 20 or 25 points. If those 2 guys were off and they grabbed, they were the sole focus of opposing teams. But if those 2 guys were off, Mississippi State's chances of winning decreased a lot.
Neil, in terms of realistic expectations this year, is it just get in the tournament and kind of see what happens at this point because they haven't done it I think once since 2010 they've been in the tournament? Is that right?
Yeah, 2 seasons ago. They went back with that group that had Tyson Carter and Holman and Hugh Weatherspoon, those guys. They got to San Jose and got beat by a good Liberty team in the opening round out there. Yeah, and Coach Allen's brought up the NIT as a springboard before. Okay, so State got to the game against Memphis in the title game, and you hope that that's the platform that launches you back into the NC2A tournament. And with all the talent around, if it gels together, I think it can be. Paul brings up really good points too about Iverson Molinar. The thing last year that was so tough is that Iverson was the one guy that you felt like early in the year, if he shot a three, he had a great chance of making it. And the numbers bared that out over the course of the year. Derek Fountain became a guy later in the year as he got more minutes that gave him another outside threat. But if they didn't hit, now all of a sudden you're talking about inside, you've got Tolu Smith. And it becomes real easy for opposing defenses to start to get in there and pack it in around him. And then it turns into a really bad night all the way around. They've got to have more consistency out of those guys in the backcourt to show that they can spread the floor out defensively, and either they've got opportunities to drive or they can set up those big guys inside. If they can do that, I think the ceiling is incredibly high for them.
I do too. I mean, I think it might come down to chemistry with this team. I mean, again, and you can say that with so many teams. We're talking about 4 key transfers here. We haven't even talked about the freshmen because I don't know how many of the freshmen are going to have a chance to really play, to be honest. But chemistry is going to be so important with a team like this that brings in not just 4 transfers, but 4 transfers that all think they're going to average 15 a game. Let's be honest. All 4 of those dudes come in here thinking, I'm going to average 15 a game, and if I average 7 or 8 a game, it's going to be a disappointment. How does Ben Howland, Paul, how does he handle this group from that perspective of managing expectations, trying to keep everybody happy? Because if not, we've seen it, maybe not necessarily in Starkville, but we've seen it in the SEC. If you don't have that chemistry, it doesn't matter how much talent you have.
Yeah, and I go back and you bring up a good point there. And like I said, it's going to be about egos and guys. I shouldn't say knowing their role, but knowing how good the team can be collectively as a group. I go back to that experience because, maybe not from a record standpoint, and you could argue if Memphis deserved to be in the tournament last year or not. But DJ is kind of used to that. He was on a very talented Memphis team where he didn't start all the times. He was usually their 6th man and first guy off the bench. So he's used to that role, even though he'll be starting this year. And thing with Rocket Watts, Iverson brought up a good point to me, and I asked him to explain the difference between building chemistry last year compared to this year. And he said last year was a challenge because, yes, you had new faces, but you had a lot of inexperience. He believed that the experience of these guys this year will help with that chemistry because they know what has to be done. They've all played at a high level. And, DJ's played at Memphis, Garrison at North Carolina, Rocket at Michigan State. That's some blue blood programs there. And they know the NCAA tournament is always the goal and to do damage there. So, I think that background with those guys will help the chemistry, but, obviously the season will tell the tale in that. But I think they have all good backgrounds to base off of when it comes to chemistry.
All right, let's finish it out here with projections. What do you guys think they're going to do this year? Not what the expectations are. If you guys had to guess, Neil, I'll start with you. Give me kind of what they do in the regular season and then a guess, because it is a guessing game. Let's be honest. What they do if they get to the tournament.
Yeah, I'll take kind of the easy way. I think, again, we talked about how tough the SEC is going to be. I do think this team is talented enough that it's got a chance to be somewhere maybe challenging for that 4th spot or just below that. I just think you're going to have some teams at the very top of this thing that are going to be really, really good. If they get there, they're in the NC2A tournament without any issue. And then I think from there, the goal is, okay, see if you can get to that second weekend. That's what I would hope with a talented team they're able to do. Now, I know that's pretty high, expectation level from the guy who's covering the team, but the talent level's high, the excitement level is there. If it all comes together, I think that's realistic.
And, I'm going to echo what Neil just said. I think the top 5 SEC finish is very doable for this team. We saw the SEC record, SEC schedules get released, and it's tough. It's the SEC, like we've said. It's a loaded SEC, but I think there's some favorable matchups that they got. Some teams that they get to play twice. Obviously, playing Alabama twice and Team Arkansas. That's gonna be tough. But that's what the SEC is. And from a tournament standpoint, I do think this is a team. If they're feeling confident and they get on a roll and they've got momentum going into March, I think this is a team that can make it to the second weekend. And of course, as you said, the NCAA tournament's all about matchups. It depends on who you face. We saw that with Mississippi State. Last time they were in the tournament against Liberty, ran into a hot shooting team, and Mississippi State just didn't have the shooting power to stay with them. But I think a top 5 SEC finish is very doable. And as Neil said, you finish top 5 in the SEC this year, you're going to be comfortably in the NCAA tournament.
I'm with you guys. I think they've got good balance, good guards, good bigs, wings. They have a little bit of everything. So when you look at their team and their top 7, and we haven't even talked about Fountain that much, but I think they've got everything you need, right? And yes, it's going to be tough with Kentucky, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee. As we talked about, Arkansas. You've got to beat the Floridas, the LSUs. Like, those are the teams you got to finish ahead of. You don't have to finish ahead of those other 5. If you finish 6th, you're not only going to get in. Probably this year, you're not even going to be in the 8-9 game. You're going to be somewhere in like that 6-7 seed. So I think Ben Howland has done a great job in his staff of assembling a team here through the transfer portal when everybody else has gone after transfers, right? I mean, it's the world we live in these days. There's so much competition for these guys, and he got 4 really good ones. Now, again, one of them, Garrison Brooks, probably wasn't that hard to land with George on staff, but I think the other 3, they did a great job of getting to come back. As you said, Paul, they were second for all these guys, so I think that helped. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a guy on the rebound. So Mississippi State, I think we all agree, guys, high expectations this year in Starkville. I think they get back to the NCAA tournament for the second time since 2010. Appreciate you guys joining us, and make sure you follow the Field of 68 for all your preseason content throughout the year. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it, guys.